Hello. I thought I was going to have the countdown. Hello. This is Lazarus Chernik, guest hosting The Professional Artist with Echo Chernik. You're listening on UPRN 107.7 FM, broadcast out of New Orleans, simulcast on YouTube and Twitch and wherever fine goods are sold. Please like and subscribe and call up and tell everyone you know how great and wonderful this show is. Pardon me. Echo is actually at a show again this weekend. It's the summer. It's very busy for her. And I decided I would talk today about artist website portfolios. It's another topic that I lecture on and give workshops on. I've been doing that for 2025, been doing that for 27 years. I have been the creative director of multiple web design firms, and as the internet creative director, or even the department head of the entire web development, the retail web development department. I've personally built by hand entire point of sale systems, as well as entire art websites for photographers, for architects, interior designers, retail sites of every possible incarnation, intranets, and I have led teams of designers and programmers of dozens of people to produce incredibly large, complicated projects. So from big to small, I've done it, and I would like to say I know what I'm talking about, but things are always changing. Things are always updating. You have to keep on top of things. So I'm going to offer conventional wisdoms and knowledge that, they were absolutely true at one point in time, that they will probably remain true for some time, but there may always be some tweaks that need to be made and understood. I giving that rundown so that we can get into detail, and I don't have to constantly say, if this works or doesn't work for you. The reality is that these are all things that should be considered golden rules that you have to try and understand before you can just break them. There are a lot of bad advice out there for artists. There's also a lot of artists that, they're focused on creating the work, but they're not focused on how to present themselves. And that's what I want to share with you. I want to teach people how to present themselves as an artist. Sorry, just double checking messages to see if anyone's commented. To start with, why does an artist need a website? Well, it's 2025. A long time ago, this was actually a question that was legitimate. Now, it's just mandatory. Every artist needs a website. And I'm sorry to say that a lot of these website portfolio groups like ArtStation and a few of these others aren't doing enough. You should have one as well, but you should not treat one of these group portfolio sites as your main point of contact for your career. And I'll get to all the reasons why in a little bit. There are today very easy to use tools to build a custom website. I will highly recommend websites like Pixpa, Pixpa.com, and some WordPress templates as great tools to create a proper artist's website to reach their collectors and their fans and who they're commissioned. I have to really denounce Wix and a bunch of other sites that are bragging about using AI content generation tools in their process, because it's literally theft. And, as an artist, if you're trying to sell yourself, you can't sell someone else's art, and you certainly can't, break the law doing it, even though you'll never get caught. I don't agree with that. And of course, you want to sell your own work. If you're an artist who uses AI tools, just log off right now. Just, turn this off. Turn up another video instead. I have nothing to say to you. You're not an artist, and none of this applies to you. I'm only talking to people who actually need to produce art to have a career. They need to have the world see the vision that's inside their heads as only they can create. And AI gen tools literally take other people's ideas and ways they do things, and then they crudely stick it into a pocket without consideration of anybody. But enough of that. You need one because nowadays, people who want to commission artists, real human artists, they want to connect with them. They want to understand them. They want to meet them. And in face-to-face, there's a limitation. You just don't meet that many. But you send people a website, you give them a business card, you tell everything about yourself to them directly. And they can learn everything they need to from the website to decide whether to hire you or not. Because of that, everything about your website needs to be focused on the people visiting your site. Again, this sounds like a no-brainer, but even today, the vast majority of websites by artists are not considerate of their user, and they aren't, they're just throwing stuff up, thinking of it as another work of art. And it's not in that way. You're not creating a work of art for people to admire. You're trying to communicate your value, trying to convince somebody that they need you. That's a different tack. People who are illustrators and graphic designers have a much easier time grasping that, because that's all the commercial world is, doing things for other people. If you don't have that professional training, experience, background, advice, and you want to get into doing commissions for people, then this is completely new to you. But I'm going to talk to everyone at the same level. A user-focused design means that every decision made about how the website looks and works is based on how the user wants it to be done. And here are the simple questions for a criteria for you to begin that. who the user is. Who do you want to work for? All right. You might have a dream client. You might have a dream project. Matt, you might have a general idea of a niche that you fit into. That's fine. Who do you want to work for? Follow-up question. Can they afford you? That's a very big deal. It's very easy for people to be out of their clients' reach. They're too good for the clients that they want. For whatever, whether it's overhead or the amount of labor involved, that you might be a great book cover artist, and it takes, you need to sell book cover for $3,000 to $5,000, but you want to work for the little guy and you want to do indie stuff. Well, indie authors can't afford that. Alternatively, you might want to work for the super big people, but you need to craft your portfolio in such a way that your website looks like, justifies the amount of money that they're willing to pay. And this isn't just publishing. This is advertising, design, everything. Packaging. Another question. Who can afford you? That's a big deal. You may want to work for the little guy, but, reality is they can't afford you, so you need, but somebody else can. And that other person who can't afford you is going to have different criteria. And that comes down to the last question. What do they want from you? And you take these 4 questions, and they define essentially the extremes of who you're talking to, the balance of what you want to do with what will make you a living. And then you have to find a way of balancing those two. Okay? That you have to find a way of satisfying both sides, which is not as scary as it sounds. Everything in design is about balance anyway. Styles change over time, and audiences' needs change. I will point out that I built EchoX.com using a template and heavily modified it, but EchoX.com is not currently up to date with the latest market needs, audience needs, but it will soon. I'll explain that later. To meet every audience, you need to present yourself as professional. Now, professional doesn't mean conservative or tired or boring, right? It means organized, it means clean, easy to use, and profit-minded. Now, maybe there are some people who are going to be hiring you to, paint their dogs and their cats. Echo will do that as well for people. And they're not so interested in anything except for their painting. But a lot more money are in the clients for businesses. And they're not hiring art because it looks cool. They're hiring art because they want it to make them money. They need a package design. They need a book cover. They need a commercial. They need an advertisement. They need something that is supposed to make them money. And they want someone to hire somebody who understands that, who's focusing on having the work of art, their commission, make the money first and foremost. Sloppy design always means inconsistent work, can't communicate clearly, and can't meet deadlines. No ifs, ands, or buts. Okay. And sloppy design is, I don't want to be rude and point out examples, but sloppy design is difficult to navigate. is filled with personal elements, infused with images and language that blur between what is fine art and what is commission work. I'll just move on. The name of your business, the name of your website, I have a very strong belief in the power of your name. As an artist, your name is your signature, and that is going to be timeless. It's based off of what you do. Many artists change their name, which is perfectly valid, but that name is still applied to them as a person, as well as their art and their career. They are all linked. The reason why it should be linked is that a studio name is one, impersonal. It doesn't say who's going to be doing the work. It just, someone could hire a studio and they don't know who's actually going to be doing the work. Could be any one of multiple people, or it could be outsourced. But when they hire a studio or artist by a certain name, they expect that name to be first and foremost who's doing the work, or at least who is responsible for the work all the way through. Years ago, when I was a teenager, I worked for an animation studio called Karen Johnson Productions. Karen Johnson was the owner of the animation studio, and she had a lot of artists working for her, but ultimately she was the face of the company, and she treated it that way. She split from another animation studio, and when she set it up, she put her name on it, and suddenly everyone was going to Karen instead of going to a random studio name. Another reason why you don't want to use studio name is that studio names are most often creatively named, creative choices that reflect the personal values, beliefs, interests of the artist. And that level of personality is not business focused enough. When someone wants to hire a studio, they want responsibility, care, and customer service, as well as good art. But the owner of a $10 million business who stresses every single month about how they're going to pay rent, how they are going to pay their dozens of employees, and competing against their rivals, is most likely not going to trust a studio named Rainbow Sprinkle Breakfast Cereal Pagan.com. It's just doesn't speak to the average MBA, accountant, business owner's understanding or appreciation for what they're going to get out of it. They have no problems paying a person's name, but once you start applying personalities, like what if they have personal issues with some of the things in your name? What if they don't want to work with someone who eats rainbow sprinkle breakfasts? They think it's too childish. What if they don't like the term pagan in it? What if they don't like blah, blah, blah? Suddenly, rather than convince them that you are someone that you can work with, they're now judging your values and whether they match with theirs. And the only value that really matters when trying to win business is, can you make the money? There are alternatives and additional things, especially nowadays. You can definitely market yourself to people who share your personal values, but instantly that means you're going to be, putting a barrier between yourself and someone else who doesn't value that. If you can make a living doing it, Good for you. But maybe don't bring it up instantly. Let it be part of the process. Someone doesn't need to know that your opinions by your website name. They can just go and look through your portfolio and see who you worked with, who you like to work with, what your portfolio is like. That'll tell them. That'll pretty much tell them all they need to know. Conversely, anyone who would want to work with Rainbow Sprinkle Breakfast Cereal Pagan, okay, and there are going to be plenty of people who will, those people will also be just fine working with someone named Greg, as long as the portfolio on the website meet their needs. Now, they're not going to turn it down if they see a name, because the name itself doesn't mean anything to them until they connect it to the artwork, and your artwork is what you're selling. I highly suggest that any logo you have is, I don't want to say generic, it's tied into your name. It should be your signature, or it should be something that you can update easily. In 1997, I built the first website. No, 1998, I built the first website for what became Echo X. And we needed a logo, an icon. And the signature was difficult to read. Chernik is not common enough a name for people to do it. So I took Echo-X, X representing illustration, graphic design, web design, all the things that she could do. And I applied it to a Chinese stamp, one of the, or something that looks like one of these Japanese signature stamps. So it's a signature, just in a different style. In the 1990s, that was virtually unheard of. There was almost nobody did that. 2025, it's become more and more popular. In fact, a lot of our friends do it, but it is still a signature. It's not just a logo; it's both. Larry Elmore has an incredible signature that he uses as a logo. LarryElmore.com. It's all brushstrokes, and it's virtually identical to how he signs all of his paintings. So, and again, that ties everything together as a brand. So let's talk about the navigating a site. What's the best way of doing that? Your art website needs a portfolio, an about section, and a contact section. That's it. Those are the only three things you need. And your portfolio is 99% of it. People come to your website to see your art, right? Now, the about section is often misunderstood to be a biography or to be a resume. It's not. It's neither. It's an advertisement. The about page is where you explain to visitors why they should hire you. They should hire you because you've been doing this for the X amount of years, and you specialize in this kind of style and this type of content, and you're passionate about this particular industry. They're not going to hire you because if you have a dog. They're not going to hire you because you like to write poetry. They don't care. In fact, writing poetry is, and those things is almost a negative because it's not related to art. They want to hire someone who's dedicated to getting their job done, not dedicated to going on vacations, across the world, and camping in the middle. Keep that personal stuff off of your professional site. That's not what they're hiring you. They want to know just about why you are going to do their project exactly the way they need it. Okay, so your bio should be brief, and it should focus on the work, And you can sprinkle in things about your personal life a little bit to make yourself human. Definitely. Especially in the age of AI, you want to make yourself sound human. A nice photograph or something, a little personality in how you write it. But don't deviate from how it's all supposed to be important to the person who wants to hire you. The contact section is extremely brief. All right. If you're lucky enough to have a physical studio, to put your address there. Many websites. I'm trying to rephrase this. Website security, especially HTTPS certificates, require an address to be advertised on the website. And I highly recommend this as well. For artists that work out of their home, I can see this can be scary, especially for women, especially for families with kids. They don't want to be doxxed. They don't want really people to know it. The problem is that if you don't put it up there, your clients aren't going to know that you're real, and they're not going to trust it. You can say you are a person that lives somewhere, but without the address that they can actually Google and find out for sure that you could be somewhere in the middle of Asia somewhere just pretending. That's why the security certificates are important. You can buy anonymous addresses that tie into your security certificates. How that all works is too complicated for right now. I would recommend that you only put your address down there for the certificate purposes, but definitely put a P.O. box down for your address on a contact page. And you also want to have a dedicated email address to work and a telephone number for phone and texts and a voicemail and a message and text that says, whether they can or cannot text or leave a voicemail. If you need to get another telephone line, you can do that, especially nowadays. You can actually get multiple telephone numbers for a single phone. So like Echo has she has a phone, and then she has 2 telephone numbers for that that go to the exact same phone. I highly recommend that. Do not use an actual email form for contact. While there are still people using them, I don't know, but the market research has been pretty definitive that the average person doesn't like them. They don't want to use them. Why? Because you can't get a read receipt from them. If I email joe@rainbowsprinkles.com, I know I have a record of that email on exactly the date and time that I sent it, and I can even click read receipt so I know when Joe opened that email. Using a contact form, it vanishes into the ether. I will never know if that person read it or not. And I need to know that. Because what if they didn't get it? Well, that's a problem. What if they got it, responded, but their response got blocked by my spam settings for some reason? I will never know that. Most importantly, if I'm looking to hire someone, if I'm a studio head and I'm looking to hire someone for my client to work on a project, I was an advertising creative director. I need to be able to reach this artist, find out if their availability and what their rates are now, so that I can write up my document and submit the request and approval to the client so they can get hired. Maybe I was given the assignment on a Thursday, and I spent all day Friday looking for someone. And, and I emailed people, and I didn't hear back from any of them. Monday, I have client meetings on Tuesday. So I'm now panicking. It's now Monday. All the people that I wanted are gone. I now have to look again for completely new people. Well, I find different people, and some of them are even better than the first one. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness. But I don't have time to send an email. I don't have time to wait for a form. I pick up the phone and I call. And if the voicemail sounds like a person, the voicemail is an automated voicemail, I hang up. If the voicemail is a person that says, hi, I'm so-and-so artist and illustration. I'm sorry, not able to answer your phone right now. Please leave a message. I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Absolutely, that's what I want. At least I feel like I've reached the exact person. Otherwise, I could have felt I misdialed. But if I reach a phone call that says, hi, this is Joe. I'm out and about right now. Please leave a message. And see you later, alligator. Click. That's not professional. That's not someone I think that's someone who's going to be juggling my job between, beers at a hockey game. I want dedication. I want someone who sounds like they understand customer service. They understand what my business is, what my client's business is, what business is. Okay. So going back to the portfolio, this is absolutely critical. Navigation. Echo's website is echo-x.com, and I recommend that everyone take a look at it as an idea. I'm not saying it is perfect, and I'm not saying that it has, that you should copy it. You probably won't be able to, but it has some absolutely critical elements to it. It is a portfolio that is sortable. Anyone who goes there can find what they're looking for easily. Okay. And I have the same work of art in multiple places. Now, this is done programmatically, dynamically, but it can also be just done manually. You can just make multiple pages of the same work of art and have it appear at different places. So it's still doable. But your users are going to be searching for things differently. Someone's going to come to your website and look for dragons. So they want to look, where have you done all dragons? I just want to see all the dragons you've done. Well, on Echo's site, you can click by subject, by mythical creatures, or by creatures. Boom. And there will be all the creatures on that page, with including a lot of dragons. Years ago, I went to I was working with an illustrator who's a friend of mine, and he was complaining about his website wasn't getting traction, and he stopped bothering. And I went to the website, and I just ran it off the head, said, okay, I want to see all the dragons. Problem was, his website was navigated by project. So first thing I had to do was to see a list of all of his clients and figure out which clients might have hired him for a dragon. Click on that. Then it will see a list of projects. Which one of them might have a dragon in it? And then when you click that project, there would be a slew. This is a very popular artist. He had a lot of work, but I went to, we go to the one page, and maybe there was a dragon in it, maybe there wasn't, but there was like 30 different pieces in there. And then I'd try and go to another section. Then if I only found the one dragon, well, then I still want to see more. So I'd have to keep doing this over and over and over again just to find all the dragons. Turns out, I talked to him. He did like 70 dragons, but they weren't grouped together. No one is going to know who your clients are, what your clients have hired you to do. So you can't list things by your sorting system. You have to list them by how the user wants to see them. The user wants to see all the women that you've done, all the men that you've done, all the beverages that you've done, all the book covers that you've done, all the dragons that you've painted, all the products that you've created, all the brands you've done, all the logos, all the websites. And they're going to want to see, okay, I want to see all the websites. Now I want to see the websites that are retail websites. I want to see all the clothing retail websites. Or I want to see all the book cover illustration. I want to see all the sci-fi book cover illustration. I want to see all the sci-fi with just robots. Those are categories that the user understands. Echo also has EchoX also divides things by style, because Echo has lots of different styles. She has neoclassical and Art Nouveau and Cloisonné and and Vector and a few others. Now, fewer people are going to be looking for styles like that, except for Art Nouveau, but it's available. It's there because you don't know how they're going to be thinking. Just know that they're not going to know what you know. And there's no way they're going to be able to determine if, which of the projects is going to have what they're looking for in it. You have to focus on what the art is when you present it. The time you present it and how recent it is not that important. Always make sure that you lead with your best work. Tied into that is always make sure that every time you work with a client, you put out your best work. Don't just put a scramble of things of different styles and different qualities up there, because I might hire you for the most, when I hire you, I'm going to want the best work that you produce. But what I see on your website, that is what I'm going to be afraid is the worst you're going to do for me. So over time, you're going to want to start getting rid of the worst pieces to elevate yourself, not just putting the best one in, but also the worst one. Because the bigger difference between them, the more inconsistent you look. And we want consistency. When you present an individual work, all right, you need to make sure that you credit it properly. All right, you need to credit, obviously the name of the work, but also describe what it was for, who it was for, who the audience was. Okay, I mean, if you're painting a woman, a sexy woman, and you say the audience is for men, that's going to mean one thing. You paint a sexy woman and said the audience is for children, I'm going to have a different opinion on on its success. I'll move on from that. You also want to credit as best you can the staff. Who is the client? If it was a client, it was an agency, credit the agency. If you worked with an art director, credit the art director. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One, it impresses the people that hire you, and they'll want to hire you again because they're getting credit and they like that. But also, years ago, I did this with my portfolio, and I posted all my websites and listed myself when I was the head of a web development agency in Stanford, with offices in Stanford and New York City. And we did dozens of really high-end websites. And I put down in my portfolio what my role was, that I was the creative director and sometimes art director as well, and sometimes actually the builder and designer. But sometimes I wasn't. Sometimes I had a graphic designer build it that I oversaw, but I credited them with designing it and me as the creative director. That's legitimate. All right. And I was responsible for ensuring quality control in that project. I helped that designer just decide between all the other ideas to make sure that this one is the one that got executed to the best of its ability for the client. And the success of that project, was I had a significant contribution to. Fast forward a couple years later, and it was up, and I get a phone call from one of my old employees I left that agency, and I got a phone call from my former employees saying, "Hey, I didn't know you moved to Iowa." And I went, "What? I didn't move to Iowa." So, well, there's a design firm in Iowa that has your entire portfolio on it. And it lists me. He said, I was Googling my own name, and it came up with my name on this website in Iowa. I'm like, okay. I go to their website, found out this Iowan web design firm literally downloaded my website and put it onto theirs and put their name up there. So I called them up and I asked for the owner. And I said, "Hi, I'd like to, I have an issue with website." And I directed the portfolio. I said, "See there the word creative director? It says Lazarus Chernik." Because he said, "Yes." I'm like, "My name is Lazarus Chernik." That's it. "Now let me direct you to LazarusChernik.com." That was Chernik.com. He went to Chernik.com. And he went, "Wait a second." And he panicked. And he said, "You're Lazarus." I'm like, "Yes, I'm Lazarus. This is my website. That Why do you have my website on yours?" And it turned out that he had just hired someone else who literally had downloaded my website, renamed it their own, like joesmith.com, but didn't take my name off of the things as creative director, didn't take the names off of my designers. And when he got the job at Iowa, that the Iowa design firm just literally put his website up there as theirs. They were so proud of it. Well, when I pointed out that that person was completely fake, the website got pulled down while I was on the phone with the owner. And I got letters of apologies, and I got proof that that person had been fired and that they were suing that person for a lot, because apparently that person had been working there for almost 6 months and collecting a salary and all these things. And so they were suing the crap out of them. This goes back to your name being your brand and being who you are. Put your name out there as often as possible. So when you're presenting your work, you need to present context. Context is very difficult for a piece of work for someone who is new and their portfolio is filled with work that they wish had been hired. They didn't do this for McDonald's, but they really wish, and they designed it for a classroom assignment as if McDonald's hired them. Well, just put it in the portfolio as a presentation for, put it as a school project. That's just the level you're at. That's what people have to, will have to review. You don't want to lie because you don't want to get caught lying. And the entire "don't get caught lying" thing is huge in the art community, which is why AI art generation is all illegal and so ridiculously offensive to the community and to the industry. Back to your presentation. Okay, promoting the website. Actually, I'm going to skip over the next one. I do have a list here I'm going through. Representation, having the site represent you. Don't put anything on the website that you do not want to do. If you did a project for someone, you're not happy with it, or you decided that you would rather not be associated with it in some way, then don't put it up there. Over the years, Echo's career has fluctuated, and there were times in which she took jobs from clients that she wasn't thrilled with because she needed the money, but she doesn't advertise them. Echo has never smoked. In fact, her family has a huge, has had some very, very difficult times with family members smoking. And she took a job for a cigarette company and did a couple posters. We've never advertised them, ever. We've never put them out there to say, hey, she's done that. We have included it in retrospectives with the context and explanations as something that she wasn't proud of. And to explain this point of you have to be careful of how you present yourself. But if you don't want to do that, then don't put it up there. You will get hired for whatever people see on your portfolio. Representation also includes how to represent yourself and who you want to work with. All right. A photograph of yourself is fantastic. That's something that's really missing from Echo's site. It's not that personal. When it was first built and for years, that the idea was to be a professional studio, which was fine. But now that AI is up there, we need to make convert it to be much more appealing and much more personal, and make it feel like that there's actually a human hand behind all the artwork. So I'm in the process of redesigning the site like that. So you want to represent yourself, but you need to represent yourself as the best business person that you can. Again, photograph of yourself with your dog is kind of cool, but you don't want an author's photograph. All right. You don't want something that says, hey, you could have a drink with me. You want a photograph that says, hey, I will deliver your work on time. You can have as many piercings as you want, as many tattoos, you have as much colored hair as you want, but you can still present yourself like, I may have tattoos, but I'm a doctor. I may have piercings, but I've won tons of awards, and I'm gonna deliver on time. I may have multiple colored hair, and I might have a particular background in X, Y, and Z, but I'm going to make sure that your project is the most important thing that I'm doing right now. What you don't want is in any way to present someone that you're not serious about what you do. That's the thing. That's why AI gen content tools were invented to begin with, is because they didn't trust artists. They think, business people think of artists as that kid in the back of math class who couldn't do numbers and so started doodling, and they couldn't get into a quote unquote decent school, so they had to just made a career in doodling, and they don't respect that. They don't think of that person that they remember just doodling and complaining about learning disabilities, which are absolutely legitimate, by the way. But these people would but they don't apply any value to their memories of those people. So you need to present yourself as someone that they do value. It's 2025, so you don't need to necessarily put a tie on or show that your MBA up there. But the more relatable you are, the better. In the 90s, the big joke was all the businesses in New York and San Francisco and Chicago still had dress codes where everyone had to wear full suits. However, they allowed the creatives to wear a ponytail. It was just the joke is that I think there was even a cartoon at one point that like, we've got a marketing emergency, get me somebody with a ponytail. So you can present yourself as both creative and professional at the same time. Just don't present yourself as distractible. Don't show your vacation photos. The last thing they want to think of is when they're looking at, I have a deadline. Oh, wait, are you going to be traveling to the Grand Canyon while in the middle of the deadline? Am I going to be able to reach you? And, if something goes wrong, what if something comes up and my timeline is being advanced or delayed? You just want them to think that the only thing you're doing is creating art for them. Promoting yourself. So promoting yourself is changed drastically. Okay. Promoting yourself for commissions versus promoting yourself for direct sales. Everything I've talked about so far has been just for commissions, which are the hardest ones to get nowadays. Promoting yourself for art sales is slightly different. That is a retail thing. In fact, I'm just I don't have time, so I'm just going to come up with a completely different uh, podcast radio show all about just a retail art show, an online art gallery. So let's just stick with commissions. For promotions, word of mouth is key. Professionalism is key. You need to get people to see you. The websites like ArtStation and a bunch of others, and Behance and things that advertise that they're huge malls of sorts for artists. You can go there, sign up for free, get a free website. DeviantArt used to be like this. I don't know if it's that popular anymore. I think it's just got too crazy, too big. And you would put up your portfolio, say who you were, but your site was the same as everybody else's with minor modifications to it. And they would say, hey, you could, if you go through ArtStation, that people will find you through ArtStation because they just, navigate through and start looking for things. Well, after 25 years of experience on these things, I can tell you that paying clients don't really look through those frequently. Echo and I combined have been on 17 of those sites since 1999, and we have gotten exactly 2 paying jobs out of it in that entire time. There are people who are, there are studios that will look for the next artist. But what they do is they look for a style. And they look for a style and they look to hire somebody. Maybe that's works okay. But that's not a commission. That's not a contract work. That's not contract illustration. If you have a style that lends itself to fit in to a studio, then maybe that works for you. I'm just tossing out names here. Blizzard Entertainment, for instance, they have a global brand and a consistent style of what they want. And when they want to create a game, they need to get 5-10 artists that all have a similar style. So they're just going to go to these ArtStation. It's easy for them to say, show me the same styles I already use. And I'll just get a list of like 30 people, and they'll want to pick this person, this person, this person, this person. That is how those industries, games and certain entertainment fields work. That's not how advertising, publishing, package design works, because everyone's looking for something different. They're not looking for the same. And if they are looking, they're not even really know how to define it. If you have an ArtStation site, like I said, we've been on dozens, like 17. Actually, even more over the years, considering how many have closed. Build those, but advertise your website, your separate website. Okay. Have your separate website and promote that as best as you can. Promoting that includes, setting up TikTok accounts, setting up YouTube accounts, show off your art wherever you can. Facebook, Blue Sky, pardon me. Even Twitch, get your name out there as much as you can, but direct them to your website. Get your name, because your name is the most important thing that attaches to it. No one's going to remember Rainbow Sprinkle something, but they will remember your name. And if they type in Rainbow Sprinkle something and it shows up a whole bunch of others, well, what if there's Rainbow Sprinkle cereal and Rainbow Sprinkle car paint and Rainbow Sprinkles birthday cakes? They're not going to remember what it is. They're much more likely to remember a name, especially a last name. That there's a very common thing for people to just go by last names. If you get really, really popular, you might just be able to go by a first name, or initials. but you want your name to be the brand so that people can find you. Chernik.com is Echo's hub for everything, and it leads to her portfolio, Echo-X, but it used to be the other way around. It was the other way around because she was more popular as doing commission illustration, and people were just used to doing that, to going there. And it took a while for us to convert the audience over to echochernik.com. Now echo-x.com doesn't get much traffic at all, except by people there for commissions. And that's great. Again, I'll do another segment all about how to do a retail one, not a commission one. I'm running out of time. I would love to answer questions that people have. If you find them online somewhere, for instance, if you're on YouTube or echochernik.com or some of the others where this goes live, and you can post a comment and a question, I will try and find it and I will answer it there. The entire point of us doing this is to showcase the power of a human behind art and to help human creators take back the power from all the cheap skates out there. We have value as human beings that the computers will never touch, and that's because we're living the life of a human being. We're living the life as the people who are using the products being sold. As such, we know what they are. These computers only know relationships. There's an old Doctor Who quote I love where the Doctor is confronting Davros, one of the great villains in the universe. And Davros is all about logic, and the logic to him is, of course, really twisted. The logic is that only the strong will survive. And Doctor finally turns to him and says that logic is not perfect. Logic has massive flaws to it. And Davros is like, no, logic is perfect. And the Doctor says, I said, all right, well, here's a logical statement. Emily is an elephant. All elephants are pink. Therefore, Emily is pink. Is that logical? And Davros says, perfectly. And the Doctor says, well, you know what a human would say to that? He's like, what? The Doctor says, elephants aren't pink. And then he turns and walks away. You see, these systems might be able to come up with conclusions that make a sort of sense, but they don't have all the information that we do as living human beings. They know how words have been put together, and they literally, I'm sure you've experienced this yourself, they're just using what words have been put together the most to make sense. Well, that means they're easily corruptible. That if they encountered enough images that said that all human beings have three noses, well, because someone, just maybe a three-nosed character became popular on one anime or something, and that became really popular and got flooded into their memory banks, well, they would start producing people with three noses where it didn't belong. Because it doesn't know that humans don't have three noses. All it knows is that there's an image that people talk about a lot, so we're going to copy it. That means nothing is getting made new. Nothing is being created. Everything is just being collaged from garbage and put together. And maybe it looks kind of cool, but it only looks kind of cool if you're so shallow that you don't know what you're looking at. You have to know what you're looking at, and most people don't. But before AI, if they hired an artist, at least they would have the artist could help direct them to create something the way it was supposed to be. Instead, they're just getting garbage thrown into the mix, not the way it's supposed to be. It's just because the way it wasn't corrected. And what happens as things go uncorrected over and over and over again? It's corruption. And that corruption just can become infinite. So anyway, you want to create your portfolio to present yourself as a human being of intelligence, of care, and of diligence and skill, not just being creative. And that's the entire point of your website. Thank you very much. This has been Lazarus Chernik, guest hosting The Professional Artist on 107.7, the Public Radio Network out of New Orleans, simulcast on YouTube and elsewhere where fine goods are sold. Thank you again. Have a great day.